Hey everyone, welcome back. Okay, so far we've seen the if statement in JavaScript and we've seen the else statement. But the limitation with the else statement is it's very much binary, right? We're checking if this condition is true, run a piece of code, or if it's false, run another piece of code. But what if you want to check, for more than two conditions? You want to check what day of the week it is, what month of the year it is, and that kind of thing, right? Well, there is another thing we can do in JavaScript, that is the else if statement. And how that syntax works is we essentially have the if block, and then we have an else if block, okay? And then finally we have an else block, okay? So hypothetically, let's assume we're creating a game where the user has to roll a higher dice number than the computer, right? Well, what we've learned so far, we wouldn't be able to do that because, there's three potential outcomes here. The human gets a higher score, the computer gets a higher score, or it's actually a draw. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce you to the else if statement, and we're just going to write some code, basically checking to see who won, right? So we need to create some variables first, like the human score and the computer score. So let's say let computer score be equal to, we'll just hard code this to be 4, okay? And then we can say let human score, and let's say we hypothetically roll a 4 as well, right? Well, this is going to be a draw, so how would we test for that? Well, let's check to see if the computer score is higher than the human score first. So we know what we need to do. We have our if statement, we have our curly braces, okay, we're going to test for some condition. Then we have our else if, testing for some condition here, and then finally we have our else block, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to test to see if the computer score was greater than the human score. If that's the case, then we know the computer wins, right? So computer wins, okay? If, however, the computer score was less than the human score, okay, then the human has won, okay? So then the human wins. Otherwise, well, if the computer didn't win and the human didn't win, then it must have been a draw. Or in other words, if the computer score was not higher than the human score, but the computer score was also not lower than the human score, then we know it must have been a draw. So then we just log out to the console, it was a draw, okay? So this is the syntax of how we write an else if statement. So let's just basically do a console.log. So console.log, computer wins. Then we can just do human wins, and then it was a draw, okay? So we're actually getting to the point now where if you think about it, you could potentially code up your own game to check to see, you could actually create a dice roll game. We'll do that later on in the course where basically we'll get user input. No, that's more of a guessing game. We'll get the human to press a button, it rolls a dice score. We'll get the computer to do it, and we'll check who got the higher score. We will do a dice roll game later on in the course, okay? But for now, let's see. We have computer wins, then we have human wins, and then we have it must have been a draw. It was a draw. It was a draw. So this is pretty good. We're getting to the point now where we're starting to see multiple powers that we're learning together. So for example, we have here, we've learned now at this point how we can create variables and assign a value to those variables. We know how to do the if statement, the else if now, and the else, logging out things to the console, doing a comparison operator. So we're starting to slowly make progress in this course, build to your knowledge of JavaScript, right? So let me just review the code before we run out of the console. So what's going to happen? Well, computer score is 4, human score is 4. So we're going to enter this code block. Is the computer score greater than the human score? When we do this check using the comparison operator, that will evaluate to false, so we will not enter this code block. Then we come down here to this else if fella. Is the computer score less than the human score? Well, it's not, they're the same. So that will evaluate to false, and therefore we will not enter this code block. Then we come down to this bit here, and it's saying, okay, well, that didn't evaluate to true, that didn't evaluate to true, so I'm entering the else code block, and we console log out, it was a draw. Just to prove that to you, we get it was a draw. Okay, awesome. And then we could do, a situation where the computer wins. So the computer got a 6 in the dice roll, the human got a 4. What's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is this condition here, will be checked. Is the computer score greater than the human score? Is 6 greater than 4? Yes, it is. That will evaluate to true. So we log out to the console, computer wins, and we do not enter these code blocks down here. Okay, so let me just show that to you. And we get computer wins. Awesome. And then finally, let's have a situation where the human wins, like the way we prevailed at the end of Terminator 2 against the machines. So now what's going to happen is the computer got a 3, we got a 4. What's going to happen? Computer score is not greater than human score. 3 is not greater than 4, so that will evaluate to false. Then we're going to do our comparison operator here. Is the computer score less than the human score? In other words, is 3 the number less than 4 the number? Well, that is true, right? So that will evaluate to true. Therefore, we enter this code block and we log out to the console, human wins. Let me just refresh. We get human wins. Okay, awesome. So guys, that is the else if statement in JavaScript. It's very useful when you want to check, for more than 2 conditions, okay? So for example, days of the week, months of the year, that kind of thing. Why don't we do another example in the next tutorial, just get a bit more practice, and then we'll continue on learning new concepts in JavaScript. So I'll see you in the next one.